Imagine working for 40 years, getting up early, paying your taxes, raising a family, doing everything you were told you were supposed to do, and then arriving at retirement with less money than the cost of a small car. That is not a hypothetical. That is the statistical reality for a significant portion of Australian retirees right now. And the number of people heading toward that exact outcome today, in their 30s and 40s and 50s, is larger than most people want to believe. Here is the truth that the retirement industry does not lead with. Most Australians will not retire comfortably. Many will retire broke. Us. And the ones who won't, the ones quietly building something real, are doing a small number of specific things that most people around them are not. Today, we are going to look at exactly what the data shows. What broke in retirement actually looks like in Austria in 2026. Why the system that was designed to fix this problem is not fixing it for most people. And what the gap actually is between where most Australians are heading and where they need to be. Because if this video shifts something in how you think about the next 10 or 20 years, it will be the most valuable 10 minutes you spend this week. Let's start with the data, because the data is genuinely alarming. According to the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, a comfortable retirement for a single person requires approximately $595,000. In superannuation at age 67, for a couple, it is around $690,000. That is the benchmark. That is what the experts say you need to live comfortably, not lavishly, okay? In retirement in this country, now here is what most Australians actually retire with: the median superannuation balance for Australians aged 60 to 64. The people closest to retirement sits at roughly $180,000 for men and around $130,000 for women. Not $595,000. Not dollar. $690,000. $180,000. That is less than a third of what is considered sufficient for a comfortable retirement for a single person. And that is the median. Half of all Australians in their early 60s have less than that. Let that land for a moment. We are not talking about a small percentage of people who made bad choices. We are talking about the majority of working Australians arriving at the end of their working lives with a fraction of what they need. People hear the phrase retire broke, and they picture something dramatic. No food, no roof. A crisis. The reality is quieter than that. Okay. And in some ways, harder. Broke in retirement in Australia in 2026 looks like this. It looks like a 69-year-old woman living alone in a 2-bedroom rental in Brisbane, paying $480 a week. Because she never owned a home, and the superannuation she spent a lifetime accumulating runs out before she does. It looks like a 72-year-old man who built a career and raised 3 children, now choosing between dental work and groceries because austerity does not cover the filling his dentist says he needs. It looks like a couple in their late 60s who sold the family home to fund retirement, watched that money shrink faster than expected, and are now entirely dependent on the age pension to cover every single expense. The age pension for a single person in Australia currently pays approximately $31,200 a year. The minimum standard for a modest retirement, not comfortable, just modest, is around $33,000 per year, according to ASFA benchmarks. The age pension barely covers modest. And in the major cities where rent has hit record levels, it does not cover even that. This is what broke-in retirement looks like. Not a single dramatic moment. A long, slow squeeze that most people do not see coming until they are inside it. Australia introduced compulsory superannuation in 1992. The entire point of the system was to ensure that Australians arrived at retirement with enough money to fund themselves rather than depending entirely on the government. Age pension. 33 years later, the majority of Australians are still heading for the age pension. Why is a system specifically designed to solve this problem not solving it? Several reasons, and they all compound on each other. First time out of the workforce. Every year, a person spends outside paid employment raising children, dealing with illness, caring for a family member. Periods of unemployment is a year without employer super contributions. Women, in particular, carry the majority of this burden. The average woman in Australia retires with approximately 30% less superannuation than the average man.
Cause.
Not because of bad decisions, because of time out of the workforce that the system does not adequately account for. Second, the starting balance problem. Compulsory super only began in 1992. Anyone who spent a significant portion of their working life before that date had no accumulation period in the early and highest compounding years of their career. An entire generation of Australians is now retiring without the benefit of a full 40-year superaccumulation window. Third, fees and disengagement. An estimated 6 million Australians currently hold multiple superannuation accounts, paying duplicate fees on balances that are split across funds they barely remember opening. Over a working lifetime, those fees and that disengagement can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in final retirement balance. Fourth, the rising cost of retirement itself. $1 in retirement buys less than it used to. Healthcare costs are rising faster than general inflation. Aged care is enormously expensive. And unlike the generation before them, a growing number of Australians are heading into retirement as renters, meaning their retirement income must cover housing costs that the previous generation had already eliminated by paying off the family home. There is one more factor that almost nobody talks about openly. A growing number of Australians are arriving at retirement age still carrying a mortgage. The percentage of Australians aged 55 to 64 who own their home outright, free and clear, has fallen significantly over the past 2 decades. More people in this age group are carrying mortgage debt into retirement than at any point in recent history. What does that mean in practice? It means their superannuation, which was supposed to fund their living expenses, is instead being used to pay down a mortgage. Or it means they are drawing on the age pension while still making home loan repayments. Or it means they sell the family home to clear the debt, cash out the equity, and then face retirement as renters. Every one of those paths leads to a materially worse retirement outcome than the one the system was designed to deliver. The retirement crisis in Australia is not a single problem. It is a compounding intersection of super gaps, fee drag, workforce disruption, rising costs, and debt carried into the years when income stops, and it is not distributed equally. Women in Australia retire with approximately $130,000 in super compared to $180,000 for men at the same age. That gap is significant. But the lived impact is larger than the numbers suggest. Women live longer on average. They face higher healthcare costs over a longer retirement period. They are more likely to be renting in retirement. And they are more likely to spend the final years of their life living alone after the loss of a partner on a single income. The combination of lower super balance, longer life expectancy, higher care costs, and single income drawdown creates a retirement vulnerability that the current system was not designed to adequately address. A woman retiring today at 67 with $130,000 in super and no home ownership faces 20 or more years of retirement on an age pension that barely covers modest living standards in a major city. That is not an edge case. That is the projected outcome for millions of Australian women currently in the workforce. So what does the minority look like? The Australians who are not heading toward this outcome. They are not necessarily higher earners. Income matters, but it is not the primary variable. The Australians building real retirement security are doing a small number of consistent things. They are engaging with their superannuation actively rather than passively. They know which fund they are in, what they are paying in fees, and what investment option their balance is sitting in. For someone in their 30s or 40s, a high-growth option inside a lo-fi fund is almost always the right choice. Most Australians are in balanced funds by default, a setting that made sense for their parents' generation and makes considerably less sense for someone with 25 years until preservation age. They are making voluntary contributions beyond the compulsory 11.5%. Even an additional $50 or $100 per fortnight. Salary sacrificed into super at the 15% contribution tax rate rather than the marginal rate can add hundreds of thousands of dollars to a retirement balance over time. Not through luck, through compounding. They own their home and they are paying it down aggressively, or they have a deliberate investment strategy that replaces what home ownership would have provided, and they understand the maths of their own retirement. They know roughly what they have, roughly what they need, and roughly what the gap is. Because you cannot close a gap, you cannot see . Here is the conclusion that all of these numbers lead to. The retirement crisis in Australia is not a future problem. It is already happening. And the people who will feel it most acutely are the ones currently in their 40s and 50s who still have time to change the outcome, but are not paying attention yet. The system was designed to help.
Oh.
The compulsory super framework, the concessional tax treatment, the preservation rules, all of it is genuinely powerful when it is used properly. The problem is not the system. The problem is that most Australians interact with the most important financial account in their life with less attention than they give to their Netflix subscription. You cannot fix what you do not engage with. The gap between a $180,000 retirement balance and acute cray $600,000 retirement balance is almost never income. It is almost always decisions made or not made over the 20 years. When compounding had the most time to work, and here is the thing about that gap. Most of it can still be closed. Not by everyone. Not fully, but significantly for most people reading this, who are still in the accumulation phase of their working life. Open your super app this week. Check the investment option. Check the fee. Check the balance against the benchmark. Start salary sacrificing even a small amount. Not because retirement is close, because the cost of waiting another year is quietly larger than most people realize. The Australians who will not retire broke are not luckier. They are not smarter. They simply started paying attention earlier than the people around them. That decision is available to you right now. If this video changed how you see your retirement, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And I will see you in the next one.